All right, so again, welcome. So this is women. This is my name is Erica Dabney. I'm one of the directors at Women Who Code Charlotte, and I work for Bank of America. We are in for a treat tonight. We have Yuliya Jus from SkillStorm. She's going to be talking about Java web development the modern way. So that will be our main topic for tonight. So we'll go through a welcome. And then get right on to the main event. And that's at the end, I have a couple of resources for you. Just a couple quick reminders. When you're not talking, if you can mute yourself so we don't get that awesome background noise. And then also, like I mentioned before, we're recording, but if you feel comfortable, go ahead and turn that video on so we can start putting names to faces. As I mentioned, this is Women Who Code Charlotte. Our mission is really simple. It's inspiring women to excel in technology careers. Our vision is a world where women are represented as technical executives, founders, venture capitalists, board members, and software engineers. This is a little bit about our code of conduct. We are an inclusive community. We're really dedicated to providing an empowering experience for everyone who participates in or supports our community, regardless of gender, gender identity, expression, sexual orientation, ability, physical appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, age, religion, socioeconomic status, caste, creed, political affiliation, or preferred programming language. So we are inclusive here. Our events are really intended to inspire women, right? Aligned with our vision. Anyone who is here or wants to join for that purpose is welcome. So I just wanted to, and you can read the rest of our code of conduct there, but this is a place for us to share and have a good time. So one of the things I wanted to kick off with is applaud her. So Women Who Code highlights the achievements of our members really through applaud her. So if you have got a new job, completed some training, a new promotion, spoke at a conference, learned a new language, or taken another role within the network, we want to hear about it. I think this is, again, going with the vision. We want to support each other, and part of that is really celebrating each other. So I'm just going to pause for one moment and see if anyone wants to share any accomplishments that they've had with the rest of the group.
I'll share. I just got certified. I'm studying for QA automation testing. I just got my ISTQB certification. I'm currently working on my Agile certification, and I just finished completing and still slightly done ADA compliance project. And I'm teaching myself Selenium using the programming language Java.
That is great. That is awesome. Thank you, Carlene, for sharing. That is awesome. Anyone else? All right, so Carlene, with all of that you are learning, you are more than welcome to come and present out or share out, or if you have any topics for future meetings. This goes for everybody. Please don't hesitate. All right, so I want to just do a quick thank you, not a quick thank you, but a thank you to SkillStorm. As I mentioned, they're presenting here our event tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Daniela to get us kicked off.
Thank you, Erica. Can you hear me okay?
No problem. Yep, can hear you perfect.
Awesome. Well, I actually kind of will applaud Yuliya as I go through and introduce her. But for those of you who were unable to attend our last hosted event, my name is Daniela, as Erica mentioned. I'm with SkillStorm, and I'm our Director of Business Operations here in our Charlotte, North Carolina branch. As mentioned, SkillStorm is an IT solutions provider. We're actually based out of Jacksonville, but we have a pretty big presence here in the Charlotte area and across the U.S. But we specialize in recruiting, in training, certifying, and deploying IT talent across the U.S. So we've recently partnered with the Women Who Code group here in Charlotte. Really excited about the growing partnership, and it's my pleasure to announce our presenter, who is Yuliya Jus. Yuliya Jus. Originally from Belarus, Yuliya's been in the US now for 8 years. Prior to coming to SkillStorm, she received her associate's degree in computer programming and her bachelor's degree in information systems from Coastal Carolina. And then after graduating, she became a web developer, settled in the Myrtle Beach area in South Carolina. So she had a nice sunny day compared to us here in Charlotte with all the rain and the wind. In 2019, Yuliya actually joined our team here at SkillStorm, and she became a storm chaser. So that's our word for a trainee, and we can get to that later on in the presentation. But Yuliya, being the rock star that she is, she graduated from the program and was able to become a Oracle Certified Associate and a Certified Java SE8 programmer. And now she's been a Java trainer here for us at SkillStorm and also a developer working with the Storm. So without further ado, I will pass it off to my fellow Stormer, Yuliya. I'm really excited for you to take it away.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you, Daniela. Yeah, and I just want to say, first of all, I'm very proud to be here. And I wanted to start with my personal story. After graduating from high school in Belarus, I actually wanted to get into IT. But back then and back there, this field was common for men. So it was hard for women to get into that field and gain trust. So this idea did not get too much support from my family. And I decided that I'm going to get a degree in international tourism management. And then 8 years ago, I moved to US and I decided that I want to get another degree. So I applied for marketing. But then I realized that this was my second chance. And this time I actually can do something that I like. So I changed my major to IT, and honestly, it was one of the best decisions of my life. And I'm so grateful to this, to Women Who Code community and other communities that support women, that inspire women. And I'm so glad that we actually can support and inspire each other here. And if you guys ready, I can get started and share my screen with you. Okay.
While you're doing that, you all set? You found the control to share?
First I'm setting up this presenter
perfect.
screen.
Whatever you need to do. So I will ask everyone, or maybe a preparation at the end, I'd like to do a little screenshot of everybody on Zoom so we can post. So if you feel comfortable doing that and turning your camera on at the end, so I'm giving you like notice to do that, that would be great. All right, Yuliya, all you. All right, thanks, Savita. Perfect. All right, Olga, great.
Okay, let me know if you guys can see my screen and if you can see the right screen.
It looks
good, Yuliya.
That's full stack
Okay.
development.
All right. Okay, so let's get started then. Today, we're going to talk about full stack development and full stack Java development. First, we will do a quick overview of web development. Then we will review the steps to build Java application without any frameworks. Then we're going to have my favorite part. We will see how we can actually build Java application using frameworks. And then we will do a small demonstration and application demo. So let's start with the components of full stack Java application. I think that these three components, front end, back end, and database, are the main components of any app. Someone can argue with this and add even more components here, but I think these three components are vital. So we're going to start with front end. What is front end? Front end is the layer of the full stack application that's visible to the user. If you open Google Developer Tools, you will be able to inspect any element on the front end. And HTML is a markup language. It's absolute skeleton of any front end. Any web page out there has HTML behind it. All the content you see on the page is there because we added corresponding HTML tags. Even if you use any front end frameworks, they will be converted into HTML, so browser can actually render it and display it. So this pumpkin is the skeleton of my page. And happy Halloween, everyone, by the way. Next step, CSS. So CSS is what makes the website look good, hopefully. CSS stands for Cascadian Style Sheet, and it helps us add styles to HTML elements. It might be color, font size, positioning. With CSS, we can add small animations and even control layouts. Now, HTML and CSS makes our page static. And if we want to make it more interactive, we can use JavaScript. With JavaScript, we can add more complex animations, manipulate elements on the page, add conditions, logic. We also can use JavaScript to request data from the backend. And we cannot talk about front end without mentioning front end libraries and frameworks. Some of the most popular frameworks and libraries nowadays are Angular, React, Vue.js, and jQuery. Now, let's talk about backend a little bit. Backend is the heart of any full stack application. Backend is just a code that runs on the server side. As users, we cannot access that code, so it is more secure. You must have access to the server in order to see and modify the code. Backend is where our business logic lives. On the backend, we process data received from the front end, or from the backend, we actually can send data back to the front end as a response to some kind of event. Another thing we always perform on the backend is database requests. So from here, from the backend, we actually can manipulate data in database. We can read it, edit, update it, or delete. And here are some examples of backend languages, all languages that we can use on the backend, on the server side: Python, PHP, Java, Ruby, and Node.js. But there are many more other languages that we can use on the backend. So we said that we can manipulate data on the backend, but in order to manipulate it, we need to store it somewhere first. This is what databases are for. We have SQL databases and non-SQL databases, MongoDB in this case. When we talk about SQL databases, we can achieve almost the same result with any of them. They all share the same syntax with just little differences. Now let's see how all these three components, front end, back end, and database, work together. So let's say we have a user with name and email, and she wants to subscribe to a newsletter. So she goes online, fills out the form, and clicks subscribe or submit button. The request with the data she added in the form goes to the backend, where it is processed. Now the backend must store it to the database. Once it is stored in the database, the backend sends a successful response back to the front end. And ta-da, we are subscribed to a newsletter. So this circle of flow is the same for any full stack application. It doesn't matter what framework you use on front end. It doesn't matter what language you use on your backend. It doesn't matter what database you use. So this process is the same for any language. And if you have multiple features in your app, you probably will go through the same flow, through the same circle. The only difference is the logic on the back end. Now, let's talk about modern stack. And before we talk about it, who can tell me what is a stack? Feel free to unmute yourself and tell us what is a stack.
Well, I think a stack is a collection of technologies that works together to build something.
Yeah, absolutely correct. So stack is just a unique collection of technologies that you, or not you, developer wants to use to create an application. And there are some of the most popular stacks out there. Everyone knows about these stacks. Let's say LAMP. LAMP stands for Linux as an operating system, Apache as a server, MySQL as a database, and PHP as programming language. This is what we call old school stack, very reliable, completely open source. Sometimes we see P substituted for Perl or Python. L can also be substituted for M, which stands for Mac, or W, which stands for Windows. So next three stacks, Mean, MERN, and MEV. These three stacks are especially popular today. M stands for MongoDB, E ExpressJS, A for Angular, and N for Node.js. And when we have R or V, it stands for React and Vue.js. So these stacks are entirely based on JavaScript. And that's interesting because both your front end and back end can be written just in one language. It can be written in JavaScript. Another stack out there is Ruby on Rails. It is a web framework written over Ruby. With this framework, you can build a complete application. It comes with its own server and SQL database. So these are stacks that everyone is familiar with, but we are not limited just to these stacks. We can mix and match technologies that we like. So last one, Java, Spring, React, and MySQL. This is actually the stack that I work with, and this is the stack I have my application demo built with. Oh. Let's go back here. So we're getting closer to building the app using framework. But before we build that app using framework, let's talk about how we can build the same app without using any frameworks. We're going to do it the hard way first. So first step would be to create and design database. Then we would need to create Java beans corresponding to database tables. Then we would need to configure a servlet, set up controllers to process any requests. Then we would need to deploy our app. I would deploy to a Tomcat container. And finally, we would need to build a front end. Now let's look at some of these steps in more detail. So on the left, I designed and created a database. So since I have subscribed to a newsletter app, it has only one table. It's going to have this table with 3 fields: ID, email, and name. Once I have these fields in my database, once I have this table in my database, I can create corresponding Java beans. So my Java bean is just a class, and it corresponds to a database table. So each, not each, like this Java bean, user Java bean, will have the same fields: ID, name, and email. Now, once we have this, we are ready to take care of a deployment descriptor. Deployment descriptor specifies how an application should be deployed in a specific environment. Let me grab this pointer. So my deployment descriptor here says this star means that any request I have must go to this subscriber controller. And this subscriber controller will take care of the rest. And if we have login functionality in our application, we can add some filters here as well. And one thing that I want to mention here is that if we do not use any frameworks, we have to do it manually. Now, once we have our deployment descriptor set up, we need to set up the controllers. Controllers are just classes that can process the requests. So basic steps would be creating HTTP servlet class, and we do it by extending HTTP servlet. Once it's done, we want to create HTTP methods. In this example, I have do get and do post methods. So from the front end, when we want to get some kind of data, we send get request to the backend. When we want to send some kind of data, let's say we filled out our form and we want to send that data to the backend, we use post HTTP request. So our get HTTP requests are handled in do get method. Our post HTTP requests are handled in do post methods. Once we have this, we need to grab our data received from the form, from the front end, and we need to unmarshal it, or we need to convert it to Java object. If we send data from the backend to the front end, we need to marshal our object. We need to convert our Java object to a JSON. And JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's just an object that's often used to send data between front end and back end. And finally, we need to set the response, which would include content type, status code. So we would say in this response that we want to send JSON object back. And I'm telling you about these steps to show how much stuff we need to do if we do not use any frameworks, because everything that we're talking about here, we have to do it manually. And once we're done with the controller, we need to take care of DAO, Database Access Object. So this is our persistence layer. Here we would create our database connection methods that would have SQL statements. We would execute those statements, execute queries. Then we need to make sure that we actually close connection to our database. And when we work with SQL in Java, we have to handle exceptions. And again, long story short, there is so much code we need to type in manually. And all of this is boilerplate code or the repetitive code, the code like copy paste code. We paste it and we copy it and then we paste it for each method. And even building small application can take so much time without using any frameworks. Now let's see how this process would look like with Spring Boot framework. If we use Spring framework, particularly Spring Boot, we can simplify and speed up this process so much. If we include Spring Data JPA, we don't have to build database. We can just create Java beans, then we add some annotations there, and the database tables with all fields will be built for us. So we don't have to create deployment descriptor. Spring will configure everything for us. And even if we still need or still have to create controllers, this time with Spring Framework, we will avoid extra code. We don't have to marshal and unmarshal, or before I said, we don't have to convert objects back and forth. Spring will do it. Plus, for our responses, Spring will also set the content and headers, everything we need to send the response from the backend to the front end. Now, when we talked about DAO, data access object, we said that we had to create SQL statements manually. We had to execute them manually. But with Spring, and I will show it to you, I can have just one line of code And that line of code will take care of everything for me. I will have all SQL queries I need without even writing them. And last step, front end, nothing changes here. We still have to build front end the way we built it before. Before we do an app demonstration, let me briefly talk about Spring. So Spring is the most famous and most popular framework for building Java applications. Its goal is to simplify enterprise Java development and help developers be more productive. Spring gives us some unique functionalities, but at the same time, they reuse already existing frameworks, let's say Hibernate. One of the main or major features of Spring Boot or Spring Framework is dependency injection. This is what helps us promote loose coupling. So basically, instead of creating an object every time you need it, you ask Spring Container to create that object for you and then inject it where you need it. One of the key features of the Spring framework is also AOP, or aspect-oriented programming. It lets us add new aspects to existing classes. So if there is a class you want to change, but you don't want to modify that class, you can create another class or another aspect, and then you can take that second class and you can cut it through the class you want to modify without changing that class. Another feature is Spring MVC. This is a framework that's used to develop flexible, loosely coupled web apps. Data Access provides support of JDBC or Java database connectivity. It also gives us access to easy transaction management. I also included 3 more Spring projects here. It is Spring Data, and we're gonna use it in our application demo. This is what helps us easily implement JDBC and JPA, Java Persistence API. We have Spring Cloud, and this is the project that makes it very easy to use cloud technologies. Together with Spring, it also makes developing microservices quite simple. Then we have Spring Security here. It is a powerful authentication and access control framework. I only named 4 projects here, but there are more than 20 projects in Spring ecosystem. And in modern Java development, you can create very powerful applications utilizing Spring framework. Now, Spring Boot. Before I talk about Spring Boot, I wanted to show you this first step of using Spring Boot. And this is what you can see if you go to start.spring.io. And this is what we will look closer at in a minute. But what is Spring Boot? Spring Boot is an open source framework. It is extension of the existing Spring frameworks. So with Spring Boot, we can build standalone applications and deploy them right away. It comes with embedded servers, so you don't have to install them. Spring Boot provides opinionated starter dependencies. So when you install the dependencies, you probably, when you install dependencies, Spring Boot will decide what configurations you need or what else should be added to your project. And usually this is exactly what you need, but you always can reconfigure it or add some extra stuff that you need. Spring Boot also provides production-ready features such as metric health checks and externalized configuration. And there is no requirement for XML configuration. everything in Spring Boot can be done by annotations. So Spring Boot was created to make developers' lives easier and let them focus on business logic rather than configuring applications and adding repetitive code. The app we are going to build today is a Spring Boot app. And this is actually the front end of the application. I pre-built it using React. I'm not going to touch it. It's configured to send requests to the backend. So when I add my name and add my email, then click subscribe button, I should send all this data to the backend and then to the database. So I am subscribed to newsletters. Now I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And I will reshare my screen to show you my browser. And while I'm doing it, please, let's make a bet in chat. Just give me your guess. How much time do you think I will spend on building backend for this application while showing it to you and talking to you?
Looks like Erica said 10 minutes.
Is that too high?
I'm wondering. I'm thinking of what's the game where you can't bet over. I'm thinking I'm gonna go 8 minutes. So I beat you. Mary Beth, I think you're muted.
Maybe she's not talking to us.
Okay.
So let me set up everything.
Oh, Olga said 10 minutes too. I want to see Carlene. Carlene, what's your vote? What's your guess?
7.5 minutes.
No. Took my tactic.
Okay, so I'm ready to set my timer. And let me reshare the screen. Okay, can you guys see it? Let me move this to another screen. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay, let's get started. Timer is on. So I went to start.spring.io, and this is where I start building my Spring Boot application. Here I'm gonna select Java. This is the language I'm gonna work with. I'm not gonna touch anything here for artifact. I will do the name of my application, which is newsletter. And I'm gonna use Java 8 for this app. Now, the first thing I need to do is to add dependencies to my application. Since it's gonna be a web application, I need to add web dependency. So here is a Spring Web. Now, I don't want to write all database queries. That's why I will do Spring Data JPA dependency here. And since I'm gonna use MySQL database, I'm gonna add MySQL driver here. Now, best part, I'm gonna click this generate button. I'm gonna save this zipped folder here. Now I need to actually open it, extract it. And basically, I have a whole application pre-built for me. Now, in my IDE, this is what I'm going to work in. I'm going to import that project. So it was a Maven project. Maven was used as a package manager there. I'm going to do browse. I need to find my app. So it was backend newsletter, select folder, import it. And I have this first step of building my Spring Boot application. Now I actually need to make it work with my front end. So inside of my package, inside of my main package, I'm going to follow the step that we were talking about. First of all, I'm going to create my Java bean. I'm going to create a subscriber class. And this subscriber class is just an entity that has ID. So any person, any subscriber will have its unique ID. Then I will have field name, and I will have field email. And that's it. Now I will let my IDE generate getters and setters for me. So I actually can access and modify these fields. And now you remember I said that I don't want to create these tables in my database. I want let Spring and other frameworks Spring uses to create it for me. So here I'm going to use an annotation saying entity. And we are almost here. Let's give it some time. Okay. So this is my annotation entity. What it does, it says, please take this subscriber and create database table subscriber that will correspond this Java class. Now, we said that every subscriber must have an ID. So I'm going to add this annotation. It says that this field is a unique ID. And when I add something to the database, when I add new subscriber to database, I want this ID to be incremented by 1 automatically. So I'm going to do this annotation, generated value, and I will say strategy, identity. What it does, it just tells my database that incremented by 1 every time there is new subscriber added to the database. Now, this is what I have for this class, and I'm not going to touch it anymore. I need to create an interface now. I will call it subscriber repository. And this will be my one line of code that will take care of all SQL queries to my database. All I need to do, I need to say that this interface extends another interface, JPA repository. I need to specify type, which is subscriber. We just created it. And ID means that I need to specify what data type of ID we use here, which is integer. Now I'm going to tell Spring that this is repository. And we're done. That's it. This interface, this annotation means that now Spring gives me all common queries to query my database. I can add something to database. I can remove something, find something, and I don't have to add anything else here. Now we have one more thing here. We need to create our controller. Subscriber controller. This is the class that will handle all our requests. So in order to say to tell Spring that this class handles requests, I need to add this annotation, REST controller. And also I'm going to add this annotation saying that anyone can access this controller. This controller can be accessed from any host. Now, you remember I showed you the front end, and on the front end we have a form. So when user fills out that form, we want to send the data from the form here to this controller. So it means that we need to specify post mapping annotation here. All post mapping post requests will come here, and actually not all requests, only requests that go to /subscribe. So if we go to /subscribe and we use post HTTP request, it will come to this method. Now I'm going to create this method, public void. I will call it just subscribe, and I'll do something inside of this method. But first I need to grab data from the form. And in order to grab it, I can use one more annotation. I can say that I want to get request body. I want to get data from the form that was sent from the form. And I want to save it as a subscriber. And let's give it a name as. And we are almost done with our backend here. So we talked about dependency injection, how Spring can create objects for us, and then we can reuse those objects and inject when we need it. Here, I'm going to inject our repository. So what I do, I declare subscriber repository. I will give it a name repository. And then I use this annotation saying auto-wired. So Spring will take care, will create this repository, and it will inject it to my controller class. And what I need to do now, I need to grab the data from the form, and I need to save it to the database. So I'm going to call my repository dot save, and I'm going to save my subscriber as, which is just data from the form. And I think we're actually done here. The only last step we need to do, we need to specify connection to our database. I'm gonna change the extension of this file. And I'm gonna cheat here a little bit. I prepared this snippet of code, so I don't have to type it in. But what it does, it just supplies URL, username, and password for my database. I'm gonna close it. I'm gonna show you my database. And actually it has table here now. I tested it before. What I'm gonna do, I will remove this table. I will refresh everything. And you can see that right now I have this schema newsletter, but I don't have any tables inside of this schema. So once I run my application, I should have table subscriber. I should have table I specified here. And this table must have ID, name, and email. Let's try to run it. Fingers crossed. Okay, we didn't have any
super
errors.
secure password for your database with that root and admin.
For sure. Okay, let's see. Now I'm going to refresh my schemas, and I'm expecting some magic here. I have this subscriber table, and when I expand it, I hope you guys can see it, and it's not too small. But when I expand my subscriber table and then columns, I see the columns that I specified in my Java code. And I never touched my database. All I did, I just cleaned it, so I don't have any tables pre-built. And Java, or not Java, like Spring Framework did everything for me. Now it's time to test our front end.
So does it create the schema as well, or just the table?
can see, I can hear someone talking, but it's too quiet. I'm not sure if you guys asking something.
Was somebody asking a question?
Yeah, I was trying to understand if the Spring Boot application, will it create the schema also or just the table?
I'm not sure about schema actually. I always created schema before everything else just to avoid confusions.
Okay.
But I believe it should create schema for you. You specified in application file, in your properties file. So you can have update field here, you can have create field here, and what it should do, it should create schema for you. But I'm not 100% sure, to be honest.
Okay.
Okay, so what I was gonna test our front end. So this is my front end. This is my React app. And it still has this title, React app here. So when I enter something here, it should go to the backend and then it should be saved in my database. So let's open our database one more time. I'm gonna run this query, select everything from subscriber, just the SQL statement. And this is at the bottom, there is my result grid. It doesn't have anything yet. So let me close this now. And let me fill out this form. So the name is Yuliya. I'm gonna do my SkillStorm email and I'm gonna click subscribe button. And yay, I successfully subscribed to newsletters. Now let's go back to our database and let's run the same query one more time. And now I see that I actually was added to a newsletter subscribers list. Let's do one more. Let's do Emily. And for the email, I'm gonna have emily@gmail.com. I'm gonna click subscribe, go back to the database one more time, run it. And I have Emily in the database. So it went to the backend saved it to the database. I got a successful response on the front end and I have this response here. And stop, I forgot to click my stop button, but now right now it says 14 minutes. Let's subtract 2 minutes from here and we have 12 minutes left. So it took me 12 minutes to build this backend for this application. I don't see chat, but can you guys see who was the winner?
Olga.
Olga. Congrats.
You guys should have done it the opposite way.
Yes.
Instead of going up first down, but Olga is the winner. Yes.
So I just want to conclude. So we actually just built a backend for our full stack application. And I want to say that in modern full stack development, in modern web development, we always, I encourage you to use frameworks, because you see how we were talking about how we would build this application using just Java. And it took me even longer to talk about it than building it with a framework. And nowadays, these frameworks, they are so reliable. They make our lives so much easier. And in this case, we looked at Java framework, but if you work in different stack, you actually should have similar frameworks that can help you to build applications. Now I'm gonna stop sharing. And before I pass it to Daniela, let me see if you guys have any questions for me.
Hey, I just want to say thank you for the presentation. I had absolutely no idea about this whole thing, like the full stack. but it was really like easy for me to understand from the, like the things you were explaining and the example you use. So thank you.
Thank you for the feedback. And yeah, I encourage you, if you never worked with Spring, you never maybe heard of it, just go to the website spring.io and you can always read more about it. And they have so many great tutorials. You can go over them and become a professional in Spring framework.
While we're collecting more questions, I warned you, cameras on. We're going to take a quick picture. So if you guys can pop your cameras on with a little high five or not a high five, but something, whatever you want to do, thumbs up, whatever you want to do. I'm going to take it in a minute. Give folks another minute to pop on camera. I see you. All right, awesome. All right, let's see. Now I got to figure out how to do it. Give me 1 second. Oh, there it is. Oh, now I was looking at it. All right, you guys ready? Here we go. All right, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Yuliya, sorry, you guys have any more questions or any more comments about the session? Daniela, did you have anything before I wrap this up?
If you guys don't have it, if you guys don't have any questions, yeah, Danielle, I was planning to share this last slide for you.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay. Great. Okay.
Thanks, Yuliya. And thanks so much for being our presenter tonight. As I mentioned, you're a rock star and you did awesome. I learned a lot. So thank you. And I just wanted to take one more chance just to talk about SkillStorm real quickly. Yuliya is such a great success story, I think. One, just her story as a female in the industry. I love hearing about how, she was told this probably isn't the best idea from her, her family and from individuals around her. And I love how her story is motivating, and it proves to everyone that no matter what people tell you, if it's something that you're truly passionate about, you can obviously get over those hurdles, those obstacles. And Yuliya, awesome story. So thanks so much for sharing with us tonight. One thing that Yuliya did after her education, formal through university, she did join our program I mentioned. I think Yuliya, what was it, in the last year, like middle of last year, you joined SkillStorm, I believe, and became a chaser, a storm chaser?
Yeah, I believe it was somewhere around October.
Yeah, so Yuliya, she was part of our program, and I just wanted to point out, if anyone's interested in learning more, feel free to go to skillstorm.com. At the top right of the browser, you'll see Join the Storm, and then it'll take you to that page that you see in front of you. So you could apply today to become a stormer, or if you're not interested in a formal training class, something maybe you'd want to do more at your own pace, there's online courses that are available to you from a variety of different languages, and I know we're adding more as time goes by. So feel free to reach out to myself, to Yuliya, anyone really over on the SkillStorm team. Again, we're here in Charlotte, but we're based out of Jacksonville, Florida, so we're really anywhere based off of your location. So feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to help with your careers or just with your knowledge base. But thanks for joining us tonight. It's been fun.
Awesome. Thank you. Before we wrap up, and thank you, Yuliya, you did do a fantastic job tonight, so thank you for sharing. So I want to do a couple things while I am getting this pulled up. So a couple of things. So wanted to just offer for you all, I can't do two things at once, so let me, one, stop recording, and then two, all right, great.